There are lots of good videos out there on how to get the rope up into the tree, but I had indicated I would do one, so this is that video. Basically you need a rope that you're going to do the throwing with, and you need some type of heavy object fastened to the end of the rope to pull it up into the tree when you throw that object. I started out years and years and years ago with a regular clothesline and a short piece of pipe threaded onto the clothesline tied, and use that, get it wedged in a crotch, but that quickly proved inadequate. If you want to do it correctly, you can get purpose-made materials to do that, and this is one sample of it, and I'll go close up on this. The first component is a throw bag, and these are filled with shot, so it's heavy, but it's crushable in the sense that if you hit a window or something, you have a slight chance that it won't break it because it's not a rigid object. These are usually made in a bright color so that they're easy to see, and there are now a lot of manufacturers for them. They typically come in weights ranging from 1 pound, 16 ounces, down to about 8 ounces. And there are a lot of manufacturers, but you're not going to find these at your typical hardware store. You'd have to find a store that is specializing to some extent in outdoor stuff, tree work in particular. Most of your steel dealerships do carry something like this. This particular one, I think it was about $12. The ranges now are from as low as $9 up to $30 or $40, and I can't really address why some would be worth that much more. I like to use the 16 ounce because when I throw, I'm usually trying to go for height, and the extra weight does a better job of pulling the line up into the tree. I mentioned you can't get these at your local hardware stores usually. You can get these at steel dealerships, probably a few other places, but you can also get them at arborist supply places. And you go online and you've got West Spur, treestuff.com. You've got quite a few choices in ordering these. The other thing is the line, and this is made by Yale Cordage, and it's their classic slick line throw rope. It's quite strong, and it is designed to slide easily over branches. It's not like a cotton rope or something that has fibers that'll get caught. And this particular one is 150 foot length. I just purchased some that's 200 foot length. And you see how it's not tightly wound around a spool. It's kind of loose, looped, and it's very important with your throw lines. You don't want them to develop tight bends or kinks in them. You want them to be stored with sort of flowing curves, because when you throw them, you're trying to pull that up, and you want it to end up streaming out as more or less a straight line. If there's kinks, then you may have the line wrap around other parts of the line, and now you've got this ball of throw line that's going up in the air and creating a lot of air resistance. So to store them, you want to take that into account. You don't want to tightly wrap them around a spool. So this is a throwing cube which is used to store the line in. You can see it goes in, and you have the fairly large bends, and to store it you sort of twist it and fold it down, and you get a fairly thin package that you can put on a shelf, and then when you want to use it, you pop it out, and now you've got something that it can just feed right out of there. To fasten the line onto the weight, you want to use an anchor knot, and the easiest way to do that is to pass it through once, pass it through the ring a second time, and then you want to make sure you capture the line that's leaving. So you go around that and then back through the two loops that are around there. Then you draw it tight, and now you've got a simple knot that pretty much won't move. When you throw it up in the tree, you probably are going to have to throw it several times, maybe 8 or 10, to actually hit a specific spot you want high up in a tree. Each time you throw it, it may go through branches you don't want, comes back to ground, and you don't want usually to try and pull it back up through there, because coming back, this stands a chance of getting caught on something you don't want. So you should pretty much always go over to your weight, pick it up. This is after the bad throw. Just pull on that to undo it, stick it in your pocket, and then go back to your throw cube and pull the whole line back out of the tree. Being a small line and fairly slick, the whole thing should be able to come back pretty easily. And then you just take it and fasten it on again. The two passes through the ring. Make sure you capture the line that's leaving, and then back through the two loops, and you've got your anchor knot. Now the throw. If you're talking about something very close to the ground, you can just treat it like a casual toss. So in this instance, I want to get it up in that fairly close crotch. I can just take it, make sure I've got enough line, and throw it up there. If you're trying to throw for something higher, you're going to need to use some type of a pendulum type throw, where for instance you swing like this and let it go at the right point. The advantage of having that is that you now have a fairly good limit laterally, because you're swinging along the line you want to throw. The problem is that where you leave the line is going to be dependent on how well you can time the exact instant you let go. If you let go a little too late, then it could land over there. I've had that happen. If you let it go too early, you don't get it up to where you want to go. So for a lot of people, this is a good place to go for the intermediate heights. For the high heights, you're trying to throw 16 ounces up pretty high, so you want a lot of power to it. What you can do then is use both hands, and what you do is you feed the line itself back through the ring, so that you have a loop that you can hold with one finger, and then with the other hand you loop the line around your forefinger and hold it that way so that you're pinching it. Then you can swing those together and use both of them to get some power to throw it. And it's kind of the Wilt Chamberlain shot, where you come through your legs to throw it. So I'll show one of those in all its gracefulness. When you're throwing for height, the line is going to be going out pretty fast, and that's going to create a little bit of air resistance. You're also going to have the mass of the line itself, and between that inertia and that air friction, you're going to have a force coming back away from where you're trying to throw. If that force is off to the side, it's going to pull your throw off to that side, or to that side if you've got your line over here. So ideally, you want your line directly in line with where you're trying to throw. So for the toss now, I wrap one end around my finger, pinch it with my thumb, the other is just hanging on my index finger. So to actually do the throw, I start swinging, looking to where I'm going, making sure that my swing is in line with where I want to go, and since I wasn't aiming at anything in particular, I've succeeded in hitting what I was aiming at. So let's imagine that our throw was perfect, went right where we wanted to. It's now up through the tree and the ideal crotch. Now we can come, take off the climbing weight, or take off the throwing weight, stick it in our pocket, and take the line we're going to use to either pull down the tree or as a climbing line. Now, to tie the two together, we don't want something that's going to be bulky and perhaps get caught on a crotch when we try to pull it back up through. We're basically wanting to minimize the area that has to go back up over the limb. So the best way to do this usually is to tie a hitch down here, and we'll do a clove hitch with 2 opposing loops. Run that through and go maybe a foot back on the line, and then coming up the line we'll put in another hitch, and then right out near the tip, to keep it pretty much in line with the throwing line as it pulls it back through, we want to do another clove hitch. And we want that one to be pretty close to the end of the line. So here's our 3 hitches. Got a clove hitch about a foot from the end, a half hitch, and then at the end here we've got a clove hitch. Now we're ready to pull that back up through the system. And again, we want this one to be as close to the end as possible without coming off, so that it's really pulling that through in line with the other line. If you're only planning on pulling over a few trees, and that's the extent of what you need a throwing line for, you can cap your investment at a throwing line and a throwing weight at around $10 and $13, so $23 investment. So that's fairly minor. A throwing cube, that starts getting you up an additional $26. If you're going to use the throwing line repeatedly over the years, I'd say it's a good way to store your throwing line. So at $26 it makes sense to get a throwing cube. If you're going to be doing a lot of tree work, and this kind of limits it to the professionals, but you may have a few landowners who want to do this over and over again, then you end up getting tired of having to do all these throws. I spent over 15 minutes trying to get a rope where I want to into the tree, and the throwing is just difficult to get that precise. So one of the tools that's come on the market fairly recently is the Big Shot Slingshot, and it's a couple of poles that fit together, and it has a rubber stopper on the end so you can put it down on the ground, and you put your throwing line or your throwing weight in the little pouch, pull it down and let it go. So this can let you get your throws perhaps 100 feet in the air. So if you've got some really big trees, you may want to get that. Of course, the height you achieve is going to be directly related to how far back you pull it before you let it go. So I'm going to take it over there and put it up in the top, hopefully, of a big basswood, purely for demonstration. When you're setting up to make your throw, or to use the Big Shot to put the weight up into the tree, you need to do a little bit of searching to try and find the best path to use. You want one where there's not a lot of interference from other branches and you have a pretty clear shot at the target crotch that you're aiming for. So spend a little bit of time trying to figure out how to get the best path, and be mindful also, if you're near a house, about what happens if your shot misses and goes towards the house. So you have to pay attention to where the weight may be coming down. So I picked a point that's just outside of the maple tree here, and I have my crotch in the basswood that I'm aiming for in clear view. I come down now, probably use two hands, make sure I'm on line. Beautiful. Right where I was aiming. You gotta love these things. Nice. That's probably about 60 feet up there, so not a full pull. A full pull is a pretty stout pull.